All right, Fritz, you're up.
All right. I'm here to talk to you guys about the short-term rentals market in Portland. They recently have done some stuff that has made it a little more difficult for short-term hosts to lease their property. They're starting to crack down on some stuff, so let's take a look. Go to the next slide, please. So Portland, they are now requiring all short-term rentals to acquire a mandatory permit to legally rent out their homes for less than 30 days. It's considered a short-term rental if you are leasing it for less than 30 days. And they originally had tried to pass the permit law in 2014, which we'll take a look at. It didn't work out. Why are they trying to make the permit necessary? There's an affordable housing deficit in Portland. Basically, I'll get into this later, but short-term housing is, you can get a lot higher rate. It's a lot less maintenance, less property management. Why wouldn't you do that as opposed to just like leasing? Why would you rent out your house for a year or, your property when you could just do a short-term rental for days on end and make a ton of money? There's a negotiation standstill. Airbnb, and other companies, when faced by the government to try and get them to follow the mandatory permitting process, they were quick to potentially litigate and get into legal battle with the cities. Also, another reason why the mandatory permit is important is public safety. The city needs to make sure that these rentals are safe from the public, which is probably 50% BS. That's just one of the reasons that they provide. So in 2014, City of Portland passed an ordinance requiring short-term rental hosts to obtain permit through the Bureau of City Development Services. The requirements for the permit 2014, which are still the same requirements today, is you have to prove the safety standards of the dwelling. You have to pay a permit fee, and you have to send out letters to your neighbors. However, when they tried to do this in 2014, like I told you, the city could only show 30% of the short-term rentals that were operating with a permit, which is a huge problem because that means there were 70% out there that they had no idea what the hell they were, and some could be dangerous. Why would they not comply? Companies like Airbnb didn't require the permit. They were just, they let people go without a permit. Some companies complained that the city's permitting process was too burdensome. Hosts weren't following rules. And hosts weren't following rules number one, which was that they had to occupy the rental for 9 months, which is, 3/4 of the year. The affordable housing crisis, city required hosts to occupy residents for 9 months out of the year. And city's this was an attempt to protect the affordable rental homes from turning into year-round short-term rental pads. Like I described before, that people were just doing short-term Airbnb rentals instead of leasing out their apartment for whatever, for a year. And this is why, because short-term rentals can be rated for much higher rates than regular rentals. They also require a lot less maintenance and management. Overall cash-on-cash yield is a lot higher to the owner. But in June 12th of this last year, the city passed a vote to change the permitting process. The city is going to require these two things from rental companies: mandatory permitting for all short-term rentals, and short-term rental companies will provide information on all rentals in Portland under their company. And like I said in the past, some rental companies when they were forced with this decision, would come back to the city and tell them that we're going to leave, or threaten them with litigation. But in March of 2019, a similar policy was attempted to pass, or did pass, Santa Monica. With Santa Monica, the city required that all short-term rentals, have the permit, and otherwise they would have to share their information, and it was approved. So this gave Portland its cushion to fight the battle, and so now, starting in December, if you rent 2 or fewer bedrooms, you'll have to get a Type A permit. If you rent 2 or few bedrooms in your residence, you'll have to get a Type B. If you plan to rent 3 or more rooms, Type B will be required to go through the city's conditional land use review process. You also have to still inform your neighbors, and they give you a letter to send out to your neighbors. The inspection, the city will have to come through and inspect. One of the biggest things is each room has to have a smoke detector or a CO2 detector. Some may have to have a CO2 detector. The 9 months thing still will hold true. If it's a residential, this is my understanding, residential zoning, and if it's a house, a dwelling, you'll have to occupy the space 9 months a year. But one way around this, like I mentioned, and this is my understanding, and I asked a good friend of mine. I'm not sure if it's not 100% sure this is true. Try to look for more information on it. But commercial land, one way to completely avoid the permitting process is to find a home on commercial land. Obviously, ideally, you want it to be hospitality. You could probably go general commercial 1 or general commercial 2 and try and get it changed over, but that's a lot easier said than done. Before I left my last office, we were in the process of getting a conditional use permit over a IG1 industrial zone. We were trying to get a building on Columbia Boulevard that is basically, you can only put office building in industrial zone. So they wouldn't let us put a typical office user in the industrial building because it was like a design overlay. It was a ton of BS. And we got the lease signed, but it's going to take 6 months, and it's still in the process of being transferred over to a temporary general commercial zone. Yeah, and it would be considered, once it's hospitality, be a hotel and not a residence. Also, starting in December, you'll have to, during your registration for your Airbnb or whatever, you'll have to agree to share the information with the city in order to get your short-term rental permit and publish the listing online. Taxes, hosts are going to be required to submit transient lodging. That's a type of registration form to the city. Even if the host is exclusively with Airbnb, City of Portland, Sonoma County, and the state of Oregon, all says transient lodging, taxes, hotels, motels, and short-term rentals. And business registry hosts may also have to register their business.
Awesome.
That's it.
Cool.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm interested about the notice to neighbors. Like, can the neighbor